What if I told you that you could make mistakes almost 50% of the time in your business and still build a thriving, successful business where you're making money and growing and learning as a person and enjoying yourself? Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Shinah Show. This week, basically, I am going to give you a reframe that will transform the way that you think about business mistakes and failures. I know a lot of y'all are out there wanting, yearning, so curious about starting a calligraphy business or a creative business. You've been wanting to do it for years. And what holds you back is the fear of not doing it right, of not having it all figured out, of making all these mistakes and failures. And I think we get our notion of this very honestly because when you think about, okay, when I run a business, what percentage am I allowed to fail or make mistakes or have things not go right or get rejected? What percentage? When you think about successful businesses, well-established businesses, huge businesses, what do you think is the percentage rate of their failure and mistakes and things not going exactly the way they're supposed to go? If you're like me, and you don't have a lot of business experience, what I used to think before I became an entrepreneur myself is that, oh, it's probably what, like maybe 10%? Maybe they're allowed to make 10% mistakes. But mostly they have everything together. They've got everything smooth. It just, they mess up 10% of the time. That was my assumption. Guess where that comes from? Guess what that really maps onto neatly? School. We are taught in school that to get an A, you have to be 90% correct. You have to get 90% correct answers on the test. You're only allowed 10%, less than that, of failure. To get a B, you need 80%. C, 70, D, 60. Failure, getting an F, failing a course so that you have to retake it and live with the shame of that, right? And be labeled actually a failure. 50%. You make 50% mistakes, you fail. So, of course, being such a good student, right? And only knowing school as the path, I took that with me into business. Oh my God, I can't make 50% mistakes. But then, oh my God, you get into business and you make so many more mistakes. And here's where it can go really wrong. If you don't get your head right about that and you don't get your expectations straight, you can really start to believe that that is a you problem. You are not cut out for this. You don't have this right. You can't figure this out. You can't make this work for some reason. This shouldn't be happening. And I see that derail so many business owners and so many people who have yet to start their businesses, but they are thinking about it. And the fear is that, oh my God, I'm going to make so many mistakes and so many failures. And how can I ever even start out and open a business and start to call myself a business owner if I don't have that 90% success rate? Well, I'm going to tell you something. Something that I heard recently. It's been kind of like maybe around on social media, so maybe you've heard it too. It comes from Roger Federer, who is this, one of the greatest tennis players to have ever played the game. Um, I don't know, how he ranks in the world or, amongst all the tennis players of all time, but I think like maybe number two. I don't know. He's won like 103 overall titles and largely regarded, right? One of the greatest tennis players in the world. And he gave a commencement speech recently where he dropped this figure that really got me thinking, that made me go, what? And I immediately, of course, applied it to business and thought, oh my God, it totally makes sense. So, what he said in this commencement speech, okay, this is the quote, I won almost 80% of singles matches, but I only won 54% of points. Even top ranked tennis players win barely more than half the points they play. That is his quote. I'm going to let that sink in for a second because what? One of the winningest tennis players of all time, household name, won 80% of the matches that he went into. And yet he did that by only winning 54% of the individual points, almost half the points, 46% of points he lost. Uh, think about what that means. You can, right? If you narrow in and you focus on your failures and your mistakes and you think to yourself, "Oh my God, there's so many of these. This shouldn't be happening. I am failing almost every other time. I'm getting rejected. Every other time I'm making a mistake. I'm not having it perfect. Like, I surely this means something is wrong. Surely this means I will never make money in my business, become a successful business person, right? Whatever your success metric is. Something is terribly wrong. And oh my God, what if it wasn't? What if by winning just 54%, barely over half of the time you get it right, it could still add it up, lead you to amazing, incredible success. What he said, right? The takeaway out of all of that is that he did not focus on the points that he lost. The strength was in his ability to let that go and just refocus on the next point and just completely tackle it like a blank slate. Okay, new point. I'm going to win this new point. I'm not going to let those 46% of points that I lost in the past drag me down and make me feel worthless and make me feel like I'm not cut out for this. I'm just going to focus on the point in front of me. And that led him to over 100, right, winning titles over the course of his career. It it just resonates so much with me as a business owner. So we need to abandon that standard that we learned in school, that aiming for 90% good. It doesn't work with business. It doesn't work with most of life. Because when you're aiming for 90% good, perfect, mistake free, you become paralyzed because you're not studying for business. You're not taking a test in business the way you do in school, right? In school, you get exactly what's going to be on the test. You get taught it by the teacher. You take notes. You know the world, the universe of facts that you need to learn and understand, and then you regurgitate that back. And oh my God, if business were that way, it'd just be like a totally different beast, right? But it's not. You don't know the universe of facts and knowledge and skill sets that you need to know, and you can kind of study it diligently. You know some of it, and the rest you can only learn by going out and trying. So I much prefer this 50-50 standard. Hey, I make 50% mistakes, I make 50% good, things that turn out good. Great. I'm just going to keep doing that and try to get a little bit over half good. And I'm just going to keep going and keep putting one foot in front of another. And when I make mistakes, when there are failures, I just chalk it up to, oh, okay, cool. Yeah. One of the close to 50% of times that I'm going to make a mistake. And I promise you, I know that it's very hard to believe me from the outside. But I know this because I have been in business for almost 10 years now, and I've been in masterminds and in expensive programs where I have seen other business owners open up about their back ends and what they're struggling with. And I promise you, even the businesses that seem like they have it all together, so many of them are kind of barely making it. There's so many mistakes. There's so many inconsistencies. There's so many things going wrong, and they're kind of fixing it and repairing it as they go, and they're getting barely over half of it right. And yet they're moving forward, and it's carrying them ahead, and it's making them money, and it's helping them to grow their businesses. I promise that it's like this for so many businesses. And I'm going to tell you about just a few of the very embarrassing mistakes that I've made in my own business, so you know that I'm not full of shit and that this happens in my business too. So, okay, first story is When I first started selling holiday ornaments, in my very first year, I think I had seen an example out in the wild and was like, "Ooh, I could do something like that." And I'm going to put a sweary angle on it. It'll go with my brand, Crooked Calligraphy. So I just bought those regular matte plastic, Christmas tree balls. Pretty standard small size, just matte silver, matte gold. I put like a plain ribbon on it, and I used a regular Sharpie marker to write my calligraphy on these ornaments. And I was pretty proud of them. I gotta say it because they had funny sayings on them, so I like funny sayings like sweary. What was them? I like your balls. Merry fucking Christmas, right? They had cheeky sayings on them. And they looked cool. I did faux calligraphy in my modern calligraphy style, and they looked fine, right? And I sold dozens of them my first year. And I was like, oh, great, amazing. I made a profit. They were really successful. I'm going to do it again next year. And I thought I was very proud of myself. I thought this was a huge success until the following year. I was a vendor at the same holiday pop-up market, selling those same ornaments. And someone brought their ornament back to me that I had made for them last year and showed it to me and asked, like, "Hey, I don't know if I kind of handled this wrong or whatever, but most of the letters have rubbed off." And she showed me this ornament. And because I had used regular Sharpie and I hadn't sealed it, just a lot of the fine lines in my calligraphy had rubbed off from just regular handling with hands. And I just felt mortified, like, oh no, if this has happened to one person, it has probably happened to so many other people. Who knows how long those ornaments have lasted? Like, I kind of tested it myself, and sure enough, if you rub hard enough, that regular Sharpie marker just came off. And oh, I felt a lot of shame in that moment. I retouched the ornament for them. I told them, like, yeah, you kind of have to be careful handling it. They seemed fine with it. But of course, I thought about all the people, the dozens of people who had bought these ornaments who are maybe the letters are all rubbing off. And I just, felt like such a failure. But you know what? I didn't die. I switched markers for this next round of ornaments. I switched to oil-based paint pens, also by Sharpie. They stay on much better. No one sued me. No one even wrote me a nasty email complaining. Probably people just moved on with their lives. And I learned a lesson and I made my product better. But whoo, that was a mistake, right? You could say that was dozens of mistakes. And I'm so glad that I didn't let that completely draw me under and convinced me that I was a failure of a business person because you know what? That stuff happens. Mistakes happen. Okay. Second, huge embarrassing mistake that I made in my business. This was maybe my second or third year of business. I had been teaching calligraphy, in-person calligraphy workshops for about a year, and they were popular. My Instagram following was growing. Calligraphy was really trendy. People really were into like these in-person crafty workshops. And I went to go do one at a local stationery shop, and it was just a particularly crazy busy one. It was a lot of students, more than I had anticipated. I thought we were going to have 12, but two more showed up, so then it was 14, and that's kind of on the edge of what one person can teach, right? And give everybody individual attention. I had brought just enough toolkits, so everybody had one, but the people were a little crowded. I was running around trying to answer everybody's questions, and I was feeling a little frantic. And then guess what happened? Two more people walked in, two more students saying, "Hey, we bought tickets for this." And they had paid, $125 for this workshop, not a small amount of money. It was a mother and daughter. They were fans of mine. They were, had followed me on Instagram for almost my entire journey. They had signed up for this workshop at, guess what? That holiday market where, I had the failed ornaments. They had signed up there. I'd completely forgotten because my systems weren't all completely perfect and ironed out. I was selling some tickets through Eventbrite, some tickets through the stationery shop venue. And then these two tickets I had sold previously at this pop-up market, and I just forgot to write it down and include them in my student list. I completely forgot they were coming. I had no more calligraphy supplies left. I had no more toolkits. They had traveled kind of a long way, mother and daughter. They had paid for this in advance. I was freaking out, and I just had to think on my feet and like let them borrow my own calligraphy pens because I always bring, my own calligraphy box of supplies. I let them borrow my calligraphy pens. I took paper from other students. Um, I had, I took one workbook from a pair of students, had them share, had this mother and daughter share. I made it work, but it was kind of a mess. And I apologized to the other people and I offered things afterwards and I, tried to make it right. And I sent this mother-daughter, pair a big box, a deluxe box of, extra calligraphy supplies afterwards with a huge sorry. And I made it work. And you know what? I got some negative feedback on that workshop. I always have people fill out a, little survey afterwards, and a few of them were like, this was really not a lot of personal attention and it was really expensive and I was expecting more teacher interaction. And you know what? They were right. Teaching 16 people with one person running around I was spread too thin. And guess what? I didn't die. And I eventually got over the shame of it and like, oh my God, I got my systems a little bit more in order. I made sure I had good records of all my students. I made sure to bring extras, calligraphy toolkits, like 5 extra for every single workshop that I taught in the future. I adjusted. And thank goodness it didn't convince me that I was a bad entrepreneur and I wasn't cut out for this. And oh my God, I'm such a failure. I shouldn't do this anymore. Those are just two examples, like particularly embarrassing ones that stand out in my memory of like, oh man, people might be thinking like, what's she doing? She's a mess. But I got to tell you, just today, I got an email from someone saying, hey, I'm trying to buy your course and the link just keeps taking me to the wait list. And I don't know what's happening. I really want to buy this. Can you send me the right link? I sent her the right link. She purchased, thank goodness. But that means something is broken, right? In one of my email sequences that I send out, one of the links isn't working. I got to go fix that. Last week, I got a few emails from people saying, hey, I signed up for this engraving course of yours that's brand new and I got added to something else instead, or I never got a welcome email. Turns out something was broken. And the connection between them signing up and getting added to the right course, somehow it just got put on the wrong thing. I went and fixed it. I said, sorry, it's fine. This happens in my business so, 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 so much more than you would think. And isn't that a relief? It's a relief for me because at this point, I've been doing this for long enough that I know, oh, there goes something wrong. Bound to happen. I expect it to happen. It's just in the nature of things that when I'm running a business that has a lot of technology and things connecting, stuff's going to go wrong and it's okay. I actually think it makes me more human and relatable and likable in the eyes of my students when I can respond back without any drama and go like, "Oh, shoot, that's definitely messed up. Thank you so much for bringing it to my attention. I fixed it. Here's where you can log in. I appreciate so much that you reached out to me." Right? And the student knows, oh, she's a human. She makes mistakes. When I go, right, my students when think to themselves, when I go to make my business, maybe it's okay if I make mistakes too. And it makes me even a better, more effective teacher. I think, right, by sharing these mistakes with you right now in this podcast episode, I hope it brings you closer to me, right? And lets you know that I'm not some like perfect robot who has all of this figured out. No. Oh, constantly failing, making mistakes, things aren't working, percentages aren't the way that I think they should be. And what if, as long as I keep going and keep approaching the next thing with the attitude of like, okay, I'm going to get this one, that if I just do it right, barely more than 50% of the time, I can still build something magnificent. And that brings me all of my own success markers that I have established for myself. And what if you could do it too? So I hope that reframe lets you give yourself more grace, sets the expectation that, oh, just because they're a business doesn't mean they have everything figured out. Businesses are run by humans. Humans are, I would say, 50-50 in terms of mistakes and getting things right, right? Negative feelings, positive feelings, right? Muddling through your life, feeling like a mess half the time. That's pretty human. And businesses are human. And your business gets to be human too. So if this is the kind of thing that's holding you back, I hope it gives you permission to go out there and say, okay, well, 50% mistakes. Let's go. Let's start trying things, right? Let's let's learn and then let's get 50% of it right. And I can only do that by getting 50% of it wrong. And I'm going to leave you with one last thought. This I heard just today from Rachel Rogers, who is an amazing inspirational business coach. And she said something that really struck me. Same message. Bigger companies, more established companies, Silicon Valley companies, with stockholders and venture capital investors, they call mistakes, they don't call it mistakes, they call it R&D, research and development, testing things out, trying things. They throw billions of dollars into R&D. What do small business owners call it? They call it failure. Why can't we take the same approach that we must do research and development? We must try things. It's all a part of it. It's not failure. It maybe doesn't even count as mistake. It just, you got to iterate and test. Stop holding yourself to school time standards of being an A business owner, a B business owner, even a C business owner, and start expanding what you think is an acceptable amount of mistake in order to get to the success and the dreams that you've always envisioned for yourself. All right. If this has inspired you to finally go after this calligraphy thing, like, oh my God, I want to learn calligraphy and get really good at it and learn from Shinah how to do the business in this way, where I don't feel like I have to have everything perfect and it doesn't feel completely overwhelming and like I'm a failure. And it's all about these mental shifts as much as it is about the tactics. Start with my free calligraphy workshop. It's at freecalligraphyworkshop.com. Made it easy for you. freecalligraphyworkshop.com. And it is my full training on how to become a calligraphy professional, how to go from beginner, basic beginner, all the way through learning your own confidence style and starting a business. This is the exact roadmap that I would follow if I were starting over. It's what I wish I had when I was starting. It would have saved me a lot of heartache and trial and error, right? Just because it's 50-50 doesn't mean you can't use things to get ahead, right? And lean on the wisdom of those coming before you and your mentors. So, freecalligraphyworkshop.com, it lays out that 6-month roadmap for you of how to become a professional calligrapher. It tells you about my program, my Pro Calligrapher Bundle, that gives you everything you need to become a professional calligrapher so that if you're interested in it, you can learn more about it. And if you're not interested in it, you can still learn what I would do to become a professional calligrapher in 6 months. You're going to get something out of it either way. So freecalligraphyworkshop.com and go out there and do brave things, y'all.